Good day, everybody. Hey, this is Rob Mazak, and I am a psychic medium, and I do a lot of different podcasts. And if this is the first time you're hearing me do these, I wanted to let you know that I don't do anything scripted. I don't prepare anything ahead of time. I speak from the heart, and I just let the conversation go the way it should go and see where it lands. And I usually end up around 30 minutes or so on a podcast, and I guess that's just kind of automatic these days. So it's around that time frame for most of them. Not too long that you get bored, but long enough to get out the information. And so I want to start with an idea, and I want to talk about trusting what you get. Now that's an interesting statement at best, and it can mean a lot of different things. But what I'm really talking about is the information that comes from outside of ourselves, or at least supposedly so, right? Now, many things that we get intuitively, psychically, as a medium, or otherwise, a channeler, things like that, it could simply be, in all respects, coming from our subconscious, of course. So let's talk about that for a second. In my experience doing hypnosis for a lot of years, it's pretty obvious that our subconscious mind, or the part of our mind that's subconscious, meaning we don't have direct conscious connection to it or access to it. But it turns out that the subconscious, once again in my experience, seems to be the seat and the connection to all that there is. The connection to the source, to God, the cosmic internet, to the sea of information that's enormously populated in our universe. There is a tremendous amount of ways of saying those things. Many of the things that we get that we feel like is coming from outside of us, from God or from angels or from spirit animals or anything similar to that, could very well just simply be coming from our subconscious, because everything that's encoded in our DNA and all part of us, everything that makes us who we are, likely has encoded within every single cell and everything about us, everything there is to know, everything that there is out there to have access to. And that was difficult to say now, wasn't it? But I think you understand where I am going with that, and what I'm trying to say is that we may very well be encoded in the very highly complicated string of DNA or strings of DNA, or I don't know what the right exact word is. I'm not a scientist. They know much about the DNA and they know much about the human body, but they certainly don't know everything. And the more they uncover, the more they realize they don't know. So we could very well be getting things from within ourselves. But for this talk and for the experience that most of us have, we are going to run on the assumption that what we get is from outside of ourselves, that the subconscious is simply the connection, the internet box, if you will, a cable box, I guess. Or, I guess it could be a lot of different things. But your Wi-Fi box, the things that you have in your house that you get your internet through, that the subconscious is much like that. And that's what we're going to use for this particular talk, assuming that that is really the hub and the connection for all that there is. And so I do believe, though, that we can channel things, we can stream things in, we can receive things, and we get information all the time that we don't always know how we know it, why we know it. That's not the issue. Everybody gets information. Everybody gets these weird hunches, these weird feelings, these gut feelings, just a knowing. And sometimes we act on them, sometimes we don't. But the real thing I wanted to talk about was trusting these things that come through. And a lot of people get scared to even admit that they feel like there's information in their head that's not from them. In a lot of ways, people get labeled as crazy and schizophrenic and all these psychological disorders being labeled upon them because they admit that they have voices in their head. Well, Newsflash, people. Thoughts, our voices in our head, wherever thoughts are and wherever they come from, whatever they really are, at face value, thoughts are really language that's happening in our mind that's not being spoken out loud, if you think about that. And so information comes through us from outside of ourselves, in my opinion. It can come from a variety of different places. Some people, seek out God or Allah or Buddha or Krishna or spirit guides, angels, spirit animals, things like that just seem to make sense for them. And I do believe that a lot of times, whoever the ultimate creator is out there, the architect, that they tend to use things for our highest good that actually is comfortable for us and makes sense to us. Now, if I'm scared of clowns or dragons or something like that, the Creator is simply not going to assign a guide to us or present to us a guide that is a clown or a dragon, because we're going to turn the other way and we're not going to associate with it. When I learned to work with spirit guides, it happened during my personal journey long ago, and it was a relative that passed away young. I say young, in their 30s. Started coming to me in my dreams, and very, very lovely woman when she was living, and even more lovely when she was on the other side. And we were having conversations in our dreams, or in my dreams rather. And eventually it all happened in a waking state and through meditation and all that stuff. And turns out that she volunteered to be my primary spirit guide. For a lot of years, I worked specifically with her. And so I say that because I was very comfortable with that woman. And it just made sense, and it was easy to communicate with her, to listen, to ask questions, just like you would to a mentor or a teacher, things like that. The beautiful part about working with guides or entities or energies outside of ourselves is they have that lovely high level view that we simply do not have. We have a very limited scope of this reality. I mean, we can only experience about 1% of all there is in this reality as we know it, whatever this reality is. We are trying to navigate and make sense, or at least our mind is, of all the things that we're being bombarded with, and whittling it down to something that we can handle. When we're trying to go through life and find our purpose and find a direction and get answers and all those different things, it's very difficult in a lot of ways to even see those things and feel like you're getting the answers. But what's really interesting about beginning to work with guides or energies or entities outside of ourselves, I say entities because I've worked with many different types, it is really interesting to be able to tap into the vast and enormous amount of information that's out there in the cosmos or the universe or all that there is, because we don't really know what all there is out there. We don't even know what we're being taught is really what it is, but that's okay. That's a different subject, different topic. But the thing is, getting the information is really only one part of the equation. And learning to trust what you get and not use logic to try to make sense of it all, to second guess yourself, to think, well, I was just making that up. It really wasn't true. There's no way it could be true. How could I know that? I'm not saying this to belittle anybody out there that's struggling with that, because I was there. I feel like I was one of those people that was born with gifts, and I recognized them long ago, even when I was a very young man. And it was really kind of put to the side because I grew up in a religious cult, which is also another subject, very much squashed. And you didn't dare say anything about these kind of things in that environment. And, then life happened and military happened. And course, I'm still in the military, but it's different now because my kids are all grown, and I have a lot more freedom over the last number of years to really dig into myself and explore this metaphysical world and accept who I am and what my gifts are. But I can tell you that even though I'm really good at it these days, I'll give you an example here pretty soon. It's not really me per se, but it is the acceptance of allowing information to flow and the trusting of the information that you get, communicating that information to whom it needs to be communicated without changing it, without trying to make sense of it, and just delivering the information. It's like we are, or I am in this case, a delivery man. You know, I get a message, I take it to where it's got to go, deliver the message, and not worry about the outcome necessarily or the reaction or any of that. When I first started doing readings, because I do a lot of different types of readings, because I'm a psychic and a mediumist, which I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of definitions for those things. However, what it really means is that I can kind of see outside of the box, not necessarily be God, because God knows everything. If there's a God and there is somebody named God, you know, but in the definition of God, they would know everything there is to know, you know, way ahead of time, and, you know, in absolute accuracy. Well, a psychic and a medium is, or other names for those things as well, they are not God. And so what I've learned to discover is that even if the person or the client or whoever it is that is asking you to be that interface for them, to filter in information from a loved one on the other side, or just psychically, you know, for the now and the future and things like that, is that we don't know everything there is to know. We're not going to. And that the information that comes through may not even be what the client is originally asking for or looking for. And so I had to learn that kind of the hard way in a lot of ways, because I was trying to force things in some cases when I was learning early on how to interact with people and do this. It's not my job to force information. My job is to listen, to hear, however that works for you, because there's a lot of ways of receiving information. But the thing is that you have to allow the information to come through, communicate it to the client, have conversations about that, so that what you receive can help you make sense of it and the client make sense of it. Because when I get stuff, sometimes I have no idea why I'm hearing or getting or receiving what I'm getting sometimes. Sometimes it makes perfect sense, but other times I'm like, he's showing me this weird whatever thing that's sitting on the dresser in your bedroom. I don't know what that means. Can we talk about that? And so together we work through that. And so sometimes it's like playing charades, and sometimes it's like direct information, actual words or thoughts, and so trusting was always difficult. And so what I found early on is that I struggled with the ability or the faith in my receiving this information and this intuition, so much so that I would never sit down with somebody face to face and do it right on the spot. And I felt very pressured, and I felt like I was going to mess that up, and I felt like I was going to completely jack it up. And I didn't want to tell people the wrong thing, and I didn't want them to change their life based on stuff that they trusted me with. What I would do originally was somebody wanted to, say, connect with a grandfather that passed or a grandmother that passed. I would get their name and their age and just a couple of things, just enough to kind of get the juices flowing, if you will. And then I would go meditate on it. I would get great information. I would type it out, send it to them. Every now and then I'd meet with them, but very rarely. It turned out that all the information I got was absolutely spot on. I mean, not 100%, of course, because there's still a human filter. But the point is that the information I was allowing to come through me, to filter through me based on a specific question or direction or entity that I was asked to connect with, it was just absolutely right on the money. Even though I was getting all this validation and verification that what I was doing was working, and it was not 100%, but really close and really helpful for the clients. I still struggle with that for years, to actually sit down across the table from somebody and just break it out and talk about it and do it right there. And I remember when I was on very long-term mission for COVID, almost 18 months, doing a lot of emergency services for that event, which is also another subject. I heard calling from my spirit guide that I really needed to get back to doing this, because I have a full LLC business for this, and that's what I was also called to do. And so I left a very high-paying job and went back to it. And in the process, I was told that I needed to take the offer I got from somebody that had a store, metaphysical store, and just go and start working out of that store and get out of my comfort zone. I was scared to death. I did it because I was listening and I heard it, and I'm like, okay, here we go. I honestly didn't make a ton of money doing it, not nearly what I needed to pay all the bills, right? But that's not the point. And I remember the first few times that I remember the first time I did it. And somebody came in and they wanted a reading, and it wasn't not a reading with cards or anything. It was just, they just wanted to connect with somebody that had passed. And I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. So I'm okay, come on in. And the funny thing is that it was actually, I would say 100 times better than doing it, in the closet or separate from the client. Now we're going to circle back around to that in a minute, because being separate or a long distance away doesn't make any difference, to be honest. However, what I found is that I began to learn body language. I began to learn how features of the body spoke to you, and I was able to bring in my energy work and all the things that I learned there. It was so real. It was so cool to be able to bring everything together and just create this global reading and provide information that the client wasn't even asking for, or wasn't even seeking, didn't even know they were looking for. And so I had to learn to trust those things. And it was a process, people. I'm not asking you to go out there and start yapping to people, because I will back up on that for a second. Just because you are working with somebody, a coworker, and you all of a sudden begin to realize that you're getting information from the other side, from outside of yourself, about somebody that might be helpful for them, it doesn't give you the right, or it doesn't give you, I guess right is a good way to put that, to go over there and just start telling them, because they didn't ask. Now, what you can do is you can ask permission, say, hey, I just got this crazy message, or I had a dream about you last night, or, you don't mind if I share? And that's probably a better way to do that, because even some of my psychic and mediumship friends that I've worked with at fairs and stuff, they would just walk up to me and just start yapping at me and giving me all this information. I didn't even ask for it. And I'm like, it wasn't positive. I just felt like that was the wrong way of doing business. And it was not very accepting on my part. I'm not saying it was wrong, but it just doesn't work the same when the person that you're giving the information to didn't ask, or is not willing to receive it. It's really like talking to a wall. And so, you might as well do it the right way. Trusting was really, really a struggle for me. And even when I was beginning to learn to read the tarot cards, or tarot cards, or however you say that. There's a lot of people say it differently. And at the same store, I remember, as I had studied cards, and I knew basic meanings of it, and I felt, 50% on it, I guess. And I remember clients kept coming in and asking, do you read cards? You read cards? You read cards? You read cards? I mean, after 50 or so times, I finally told the client, I said, yes, I read the cards. And once again, reading the cards with a client across from the table from me was absolutely wonderful. And I'm like, why did I wait so long? I guess that's just part of being human, is that we have to figure out how to wrap ourselves around the truth and what it is that is true for us and what it is that drives us and makes us feel whole. And for me, it's helping people get out of their own way, so to speak. This is a really good way to do that for me. And I want to come back to the part about the distance and the proximity to a client for readings or for energy work or for anything. I can tell you right now that distance, time, none of that makes any difference when you are doing a reading for somebody or doing energy work for somebody or doing a lot of things in this metaphysical, spiritual world, this realm. It's absolutely the same effect, the same process, the same messages, same effectiveness. It is just really cool. I'll give you an example. So I had a friend of mine that reached out to me that I worked with 7 or 8 years ago. She was a student of mine when I was teaching. I had done a reading for her before when I was first starting out, and that was actually one of my first couple of them where I had to do the old closet reading. And I think she may have been the first or right near the beginning of my journey in accepting the fact that I was a psychic and a medium, going ahead and telling the world about it. Here she comes circling back around, and I thought that was really interesting. That's really cool. And all she said that she wanted to do was connect with her grandfather that she had lost, not even really sure how long ago. And we agreed on a time, and I was going to get on video with her and all that. And something happened, and we didn't connect. But I had been out walking. I'm an exercise junkie, and I was power walking for a couple of hours. And I decided, well, I might as well use this time to connect with their grandfather. Oh my gosh, I got downloads like you wouldn't believe. Information like I couldn't even capture it all, and I didn't have anything to write it down with or record it with while I was out there. Well, I guess I could use my phone, but didn't think about it. And so I figured I was just going to use that information when we got online later that night, and we were going to talk about it. And because some of it didn't make any sense to me. And for some reason, that didn't happen, the online thing. And so I thought, well, I talk behind a mic, which I'm doing right now. I might as well just go ahead and tell her in a recording what it is I found. So basically, I was talking into a mic, kind of running blind, trying to describe to somebody what I was seeing, what I was getting, even though much of it didn't make any sense to me, or it didn't make sense to, it didn't make any sense to me. Turns out it made a lot of sense to her. But the long story short is I just went ahead and trusted what I got. I said what I received and what I thought it meant and what I felt like her grandfather was trying to tell her, the direction for her life and different things. And because she didn't ask me any questions about why she wanted to connect with her grandfather. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to listen. I'm going to be a student, why the teacher, kind of teacher-student relationship, and just listen to her grandfather, look at the, some of the common signs that I get and, how they present themselves to me, all these things. I laid it out. I don't know, it was probably about close to 30 minutes long that I did the recording. And I basically shared that with her, sent it off, not knowing really what the result would be, how she would receive that, or if she would even respond. I have gotten to that point where it doesn't matter. My job is to communicate, which I'm doing now. My job is to communicate from the other side, from however I get the information. It's not my job to interpret or decide what I need to leave out or what I need to include. It's just to say it. And I got the most positive response I think I've ever gotten I think it was something like, you cannot imagine how spot on you were about everything that you said. And I was like, because there were some crazy things I said in there. At least I thought they were crazy. I'm like, so what I was getting was absolutely right on. I'm like, cool. That doesn't make me special. Let's just back up. I'm not patting myself on the back. What I'm saying is I have gotten good at being that channel, that communication device, that information is allowed to flow through unfiltered and come out on the other side almost the same as the way I received it. You know, like I said, we're all human and I'm human, and sometimes the filter that we have of our perceptions get in the way a little bit. But I do my best to make it as pure as the way I received it. Say the information and just roll with it. So what I'm trying to say in a nutshell, in a summary, is that many of you out there get things, you know things, you have hunches, you see you get premonitions, you have, what's the right word? Where you have deja vu, there's the word. All these things where you're getting sneak peeks and you're getting information about things and about people, and you're not really taking that as a truth. Now, I'm not going to say that some people out there don't receive some things that are god awful and you don't necessarily want to act on them. I'm talking about receiving information with discernment, of course. Because there are people out there, and many of them are, in prison for life because the information, the things that they get, the things that they feel like they're receiving, and they act on them are, really horrendous things that happen. I'm not saying everything you get is going to be pure. What I'm saying is that as you allow the information to come through, and if you're doing it in the highest and best good of yourself and the client, then you can bring forth the most whole information that you can, and that the client will benefit from it. There's nothing more rewarding, really, than doing something like I just did. You hear from the person years later, and you realize that the things that you brought through for them by trusting and allowing the information to flow as pure as possible just completely changed their life. I had a gal show up at a fair that I was at, a few months back. And I had done a past life regression for her, just an hour thing. That was the only service I ever did for her. And I don't even remember what lives she had gotten to witness in that regression session. But it completely changed her life. Oh my gosh, she stopped at my table and she just laid out this lovely path that had formed in front of her from having had this 1 hour glimpse of some things. I tell you what, this is sort of like when your child that you've been working with for all these years, right? Honing them, teaching them, grooming them, they turn out to be so wonderful, and they do great things, and that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And it's not me that's doing it. It's just me being in tune with information that's flowing and allowing it to flow and letting it come through and saying it without any reservations and just letting it happen. And I'm telling you guys, it did take a while to learn that. Anybody out there that's struggling with that, just beware and just keep at it and don't give up, because it is such a wonderful thing to do to help people with things that they can't necessarily see for themselves. Everybody needs somebody. Not everybody is a rock. Teachers need their own teacher. Counselors need counselors. Trainers need their own trainers. I have my go-to people as well. If I have a serious question or decision or something that just doesn't make any sense in my life, and I just can't figure it out for myself, even as good as I feel like I am in tuning into information from the cosmos, universe, creator, it's me that I'm reading it for, and we don't always help ourselves the same way. And so I have people that I go see, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. My job, and I think anybody's job out there that does similar things, is simply to allow the person to see things from a different angle, because we're getting information that's way outside of ourselves and outside of them. And it allows them to flip the coin and realize that there's more to life, and that there's decisions that need to happen and goals that need to happen and things that need to change. All those things. And it is just wonderful to help people with that and see their light bulb pop on above their head, sort of like if you could see a visual. And it's just really cool. And so once again, I wanted to encourage everybody that has the desire to do these things, and you're struggling with it, you can find somebody that can help teach you that, to help you verify that, to help you validate that, to help you figure out what it is that you are strong at. I mean, I do that as well, but it doesn't have to be me. I've only had a handful of students, and it wasn't even my idea to start it. It was my first client, my first student that forced me to do it. I'm like, okay, well, here we go. That's the way things work, right? Find somebody that can help you, because we all have these gifts, and we don't all have the desire to use them. And you don't have to do it as a profession like I do. That's okay. You can do it just because you like to help people and you want to be able to heal people or help them heal themselves and get out of their own way. It is an absolute wonderful service. But remember, even when you get good at it, your job is not to force information on people and just open up the valve and allow things to pop in when they didn't ask. You got to have discernment. As Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility. Anyway, I will go ahead and wrap this up, but I think you understand where I'm going. Learn to connect. Learn to bring in the entire universe. All the information that's out there is so vast, it's not even imaginable. Allow it to come through for yourself and for others. Learn to trust it. Learn to let go. Learn to allow. And you will watch your life and other people's lives around you just flourish and grow. And it's such an amazing thing. I would like you to go to my website at some point at lifebymazak.com, LIFEBYMAZAK.com. Find my contact page, reach out to me, because not just for services, but I love to communicate with people, and I love to share ideas, and I love to hear your experiences, because I learn from everybody. Just because I do a lot of these things and I'm very experienced at it these days, doesn't mean I don't learn from people. I learn from my clients as well as clients learn from me. So let's talk, let's collaborate, let's join forces, because the world is going nuts. People, just look around, and we need more of this type of work and this type of information to get into the world. You will hear from me again, most assuredly. I can't wait to hear from you guys. Stay strong and live your life.